My name is Joy, and
I'm Jenny.
and we're happy to be here today. We wanted to start off getting to know you guys really quick, and we have a bowl of questions that we'll wait till the end, so you don't have to worry about thinking about them right now. But we're going to pass around a bowl of questions for the end that are pertaining to faith and mental health to get to know what you guys' perspectives are, because I think diversity and responses to these would be really helpful to our learning. A little bit. Okay, all right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. The topic of this discussion is the intersection of faith and mental health empirical research and untapped potential. Okay, there we go. Okay.
Can you click for me?
Yes. Okay, so our objectives in this discussion are first to talk about the historical integration of mental health and spirituality, the empirical research on faith and mental and physical health, ethical integration of faith and mental health practice, the shift in faith and spirituality, and lastly, possibilities for future mental health care. So we're going to start off with a video on conversations on religion and mental health, or mental illness, and exploring religious history with Dr. Thomas Gutha.
Welcome to the first of several conversations on religion and mental illness. I'm Dr. Nancy Keogh, a clinical psychologist and author of the book Wrestling with Our Inner Angels, Faith, Mental Illness, and the Journey to Wholeness. I'm talking today with Dr. Thomas Gutha, professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and author of numerous publications in psychiatry. For over 30 years, Dr. Gutha has trained psychiatric residents. Dr. Gutha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure is mine.
In all of your years of teaching psychiatric residents, you are among the first to have introduced the idea of taking a religious history. What has been your experience in dealing with the residents, and how have you helped them, if you have, to overcome their resistance?
Resistance is unfortunately the word. I think many of them are very uncomfortable about exploring a religious background or religious history, in part because of the historical association of certain symptoms with religious preoccupations, obsessions, delusions, hallucinations, and the like. So I will ask a resident, did you take a sexual history on the patient? And they go on for minutes on end with this appalling sexual history. And then I say, nice sexual history, did you take a religious history? And the resident says, gee, that's kind of personal, isn't it? And besides, isn't it obstructed by the First Amendment? I said, I didn't say persecute them or discriminate or convert them. I said, ask them questions about their religion. And you're dealing with a basic asymmetry. For mental health professionals, the majority are atheist or agnostic. For the average person, religion may be either the most or one of the most important things in their lives. So there's a basic sense of not being on the same page about this. Another dimension is that, of course, way back at the beginning, Freud referred to religion as an illusion. And there are a number of residents who sort of still haven't recovered from that. So the best way of teaching is demonstrating. And so when I interview in public, when a group of residents are there and I'm interviewing a patient, I always make sure to include, has your faith been a source of any strength or comfort to you? And the patient says, yes, no, maybe, used to be, isn't anymore, or something. And then we lead from that and see where that goes. I will then follow up with, well, do you pray? Yes, no, maybe. If yes, I say, well, what do you ask for? I'm also interested in not only religious practices, but practices around the funerals for people who have lost someone, and also beliefs about the afterlife for individuals who are desperate enough to contemplate suicide. But it is still an uphill battle. My sense is that the residents who are about to present a case to me have been coached by their seniors to be sure to include religious questions in their history. I'm not sure that's very widespread, unfortunately.
But isn't it striking to you in a profession that's so interested in what goes on inside of a person's mind and heart and feelings that this area is so consistently omitted.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's a paradox of kinds. You and I are familiar with the situation where many of the scales that assess suicidality don't have any religious dimension to them, no questions or entries. And that's another kind of paradox. We seem to know that this is important. We seem not to act as though it were.
So in leaving our viewers with one message, what would you like to communicate?
The shortest answer is, you've got to ask.
Oh, always ask.
Always ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gutral, for being a part of this conversation.
My pleasure.
So also what the video talks about is the history behind it. And so whether you know or not, religious institutions were responsible historically for the care of mentally ill. A major change occurred when Charcot and Freud associated religion with hysteria and neurosis. This created a divide that we kind of know now today between religion and mental health care, which has continued until recently. For some organizations. Psychiatry has had a long tradition of dismissing and attacking religious experience. Religion has often been seen by mental health professionals in Western societies as irrational or outdated and dependency forming, and has been reviewed to result in emotional instability. Freud's teachings didn't validate entirely that the religion had a positive impact on mental health, and thus advocated, along with other mental health professionals that and theorists at the time, that there should be a separation of church and mental health. And so a lot of people believe this for many years, and now we're in a place where about 15 years ago, I would say about 15, 20 years ago, there's been an insane amount of growth in empirical evidence on a positive effect of spirituality and religiousness in health, because people are looking into it more as we're considering a holistic view of the person, and spirituality plays a part in that. And so social workers, counselors, clinicians are now incorporating culturally and spiritually competent assessments and intervention in their work with people of faith. It gives a comprehensive understanding of evidence-based practice, neurobiology, use of methods in therapy for those who are interested in addressing the issue of spirituality, religion, and faith. The definitions, so we're clear through the rest of this presentation, of spirituality. First is that spirituality is typically associated with the freedom away from the roles and responsibilities associated with religion. And religion is often organized and practiced within a community or alone.
The APA is at the forefront of bringing the spiritual and mental health communities together. Recently, 40 such leaders gathered to inaugurate the Mental Health and Faith Community Partnership.
Who've come together for a very common purpose here today, and that is to find ways to reduce the stigma of mental health conditions and improve community-based services for individuals and their families.
I was really pleased with it also, and I think both sides learned something, and I hope that psychiatrists learned how faith communities can be a resource to people with mental illness.
We come from a culture and a nation in which the separation of church and state is a core value in how we think about ourselves. But today we're looking at how we bridge that gap between mental illness and faith communities.
We need to look at the both and versus the either or. And a person of faith can certainly continue in their religious observance and at the same time receive mental health care. Some people have felt that that was mutually exclusive, but it is true that people can do both.
You know, we say in our illness that we have a threefold illness, a physical allergy, a mental obsession, and a spiritual malady. And that if we want to get well, we have to address all three of those concurrently. We don't do that in healthcare. we tackle one and not the other.
So that boundary between what's illness and what is despair and what is existential or developmental challenges is not always straightforward.
1 out of every 4 Americans has a diagnosable mental illness. The lifetime risk for any individual to develop a mental illness is 50%. About 84% of Americans are affiliated with the faith.
I think we got a really nice sample of different perspectives on this faith and mental health interface.
We share something in common, which is we hear people's life stories.
There are a lot of people out there looking for meaning, and they are looking to both of you for answers. And so today, let's help them find some.
When you begin to look at your health, you also need to take care of your mental health, but also your faith health. And I think bringing the two communities can add value to get the person, be it the congregant or the patient, in a way really look at their total well-being from mind to body and including their faith commitments.
Spiritual faith and psychiatry aren't mutually exclusive. Visit psychiatry.org/faith to learn more.
Last time I was with APA was...
Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys know of Harry Aponte. He is a professor right now at Drexel University, and he's very well known for his practice with family therapy, structural family therapy. And through his books that he's been writing right now, through his work with clients, he's been really trying to address this spiritual realm of the human person. How when we're working with people in therapy, it's not just a conversation, but it's an experience that we have somebody. And so I just wanted to share this quote from him and how he sees with his clients spirituality working in practice. So he says, "Today's society speaks with conflicting voices about values, morality, and faith, in a word, about spirituality. Consequently, therapists are having to consider with their clients the values and morality upon which to base the therapy, and having to aid clients in utilizing their belief systems and faith communities to help themselves. Spirituality is treated here in terms that are inclusive, applying both to secular and religious spirituality." So from here, what he works primarily with disadvantaged families, and seeing that when you encounter someone, most of the time they have some sort of spiritual religious realm to them, and it's a very untapped part of the human person that we work with, especially in therapy and these treatments that we're working with people. And without being able to tap into that and work with them on understanding how they particularly cope with their spiritual life alongside other things that are happening, it's just a large proportion of healing that we are missing out on.
So we wanted to talk about ethical integration, because I think that's a big part. And I know in my practice, very minimal, and in school, that the biggest issue with integrating spirituality and mental health was the ethical portion of it. Is it okay to ask those questions? Are we crossing a line with our clients? Different things like that. And so I wanted to talk about what our code of ethics is for social workers. I know not everyone in the room is a social worker, but I thought they were relevant to some others professions who have a similar code of ethics, and so I was going to go through them. Our first one is service, and social workers. That means the social worker's primary goal is to help people in need and to address social problems. Social workers elevate service to others above self-interest, and social workers draw on their knowledge, values, and skills to help people in need and to address social problems. Social workers are encouraged to volunteer some portion of their professional skills with no expectation of significant financial return. So a lot of pro bono service is done. The next would be social justice. Social workers challenge social injustice. Social workers pursue social challenge, particularly with and on behalf of vulnerable and oppressed individuals and groups of people. Social workers' social change efforts are focused primarily on issues of poverty, unemployment, discrimination, and other forms of social injustice. The third is dignity and worth of a person. Social workers respect the inherent dignity and worth of a person. They treat people in a caring and respectful fashion, mindful of individual differences and cultural and ethnic diversity, which I think is a big one when it comes to spiritual differences. Next would be importance of human relationships. Social workers recognize the central importance of human relationships and understand that relationships between and among people are an important vehicle for change. Next is integrity. Social workers behave in a trustworthy manner and are continually aware of the professional's missions, values, and ethical principles and standards. And lastly is competence. And social workers work in the area within their areas of competence and develop and enhance their professional expertise. Social workers continually strive to increase their professional knowledge and skills and to apply them in practice, and social workers should aspire to contribute to the knowledge based on the profession. I think a big thing when we're looking at spiritual integration would be to really focus on, all of these apply, but to really focus on the social justice and dignity and worth of a person, because we're looking at the diverse differences and cultural differences of the people that we're interacting with every day. And whether you are Christian or Muslim or have different spiritual and cultural beliefs, it is our job to serve you in the realm of what it is that you need. And then also competence not only says that we work in our areas of competence, but we're also aware that we don't know everything and that your story is your story. So no matter what background it is that you're coming from, no matter what spiritual background it is you're coming from, you're the author of your story, and we're here to just help you on that journey on your way.
As most of you work with people, you understand that just like the importance of being able to first work with the person is to first check in with yourself and to know where you are, and first and foremost, where are you spiritually and how is that maybe impacting then how you practice, but also like having a stable mindset of knowing then how do you personally integrate it into your work. So here are just some factors to take into consideration as you like take time to reflect on, your own spiritual life and your own spiritual state before you work with clients within your culture, religious beliefs, family values of your family and teachers, your personal experience, reasoning and reflection, organizational values, professional and business norms. And I also see that this is a value when you get into your work and seeing then how do you live out your spiritual life within your work. A lot of the time there are moments of boundaries where, it's difficult to know how to have that conversation. So being able to open that within your supervisors, your coworkers, to just know then that it's not this untapped part of you that's not being able to be discussed when it's a big part of your life. There's another quote here. Spirituality emphasizes our connections to other people in the world, which creates the idea of reciprocity. This means that the giver and receiver both get something from what happens, that if you help another person, you help yourself. And from here is just understanding that spirituality will touch a little bit more on the biopsychosocial model, as well as just, that extra layer on top, religion and spirituality, how we have this other part of our lives that we can connect with people beyond our experiences, but also spirituality is such a really uniting factor to a lot of us. And it's much more uniting than creating differences, where we're seeing a lot of moments, especially in the professional realm, where we find this separation, this taboo, this hard conversation to have with people about spirituality. But in reality, it has us all interconnected in a special way.
So next I want to talk about some of the things that maybe mental health clients might say, and then someone with a religious belief may need. So some things that maybe you might hear clients say, or the need that they have to feel safe and secure, to be treated with dignity and respect, to feel that they belong and are valued and trusted, time to express feelings to mental health cares, meaningful activity such as creative art, work, or enjoying nature, the chance to make sense of their life, including illness and loss, permission or support to develop their relationship with God or the absolute, And someone with a religious belief may need a time and a place or privacy in which they can pray and worship, the chance to explore spiritual concerns, to be reassured that the psychiatrist will respect their faith, encouragement to deepen their faith, and sometimes to be helped with forgiveness.
All right, so here's just a little model showing you. So this was a model that was drawn in 1977, and it's just to bring in, like, showing like how medical health, psychological health, spiritual health is all integrated. And through seeing this, what was interesting is that day-to-day life, the anthropological life, you like wake up, you go to work, you come home. And when we see life in that way, it's really hard to be able to work on, like the inner life of a person. When we see that there's a spiritual realm on top of that, it adds like another layer and a deeper meaning to every part of this triad that we see between the psychosocial and biological side of a person. And as we move forward, how we're working a lot with holistic health and understanding. So just being able to have this model in your mind now, when you see a lot of diagrams, it usually just encompasses the biopsychosocial part. But now seeing this, especially for me working towards our degree right now and being able to enter into my field with different images than we see in our textbooks, and knowing about, this is another part of us that's not, like horizontal, it goes vertical, as we're seeing here. And being able to see now, like, where is religion playing a part within our triad when we work with somebody. Okay, it's just a quick diagram of just the holistic work of a person. And all of those portions, especially the spiritual realm, expanding on our senses of purpose and meaning of life. In here, so right here, when we're reading through this side, just the breakdown of spirituality, how we're seeing that there's, the 4 different types: the general spirituality, your spiritual well-being, your spiritual needs, and your spiritual coping. It's, I think what's been difficult, especially in practice, is not being able to know kind of how to break down spirituality, how do we break down religion, especially when we work with a person. Typical questions we ask are, do you have a faith community? Do you pray? But rarely do we really break it down into more specific areas where, what are spiritual needs that you have? What are ways that you cope with other people, through your situation with your spirituality? What is your spiritual well-being? As well as just like overall, how what does that look like in a big picture? So I encourage you to just, jot these down, look at these, and when you have discussions about spirituality now, seeing now that it's more than this, the one big thing of spirituality. It's multifaceted, and being able to have kind of that verbiage and those words to know then about how to talk about spirituality with people in a way that would be conducive to their ability to know then how do they integrate their own spirituality into their healing.
Supporting the spiritual aspects of patients and mental health recovery. Some of the things that we can do, which we got from researcher Blanch in 2007, she offers some useful guidelines. The first one is ask but don't judge, just like any other aspect of what clients share. It must deal with own religious and spiritual beliefs and experiences to increase awareness, and deal with own discomfort or aversion to religious or spiritual matters. Focus on the client's beliefs, as it is not about your own beliefs or prophesizing. Second would be to consult with clergy. This comes back to the competence ethic that we were talking about. You should be able to have the freedom to increase your knowledge about unfamiliar religious or spiritual practices, so you better understand your client's views and the ways in which religion and spirituality may enhance recovery. So this here, like I said, relates to competence. You don't know everything when you're talking to a client. You don't know everything about a person when you're meeting them. And so the appropriate and ethical thing to do is to build your knowledge and ask them what it is that their experience has been. Maybe religion and spirituality has been harmful to them in their past. Maybe they've dealt with some abuse related to that. And so getting to understand what their experience is. It doesn't mean they have to be spiritual, but maybe they have, spiritual injury or things like that. Getting to know their experience will help you be able to support them more and enhance healing and recovery. Lastly is integrate spirituality as a part of the recovering plan. Identify positive aspects of religion and spirituality that can be increased or enhanced to support the client. This can include, for example, increasing positive connections and social support at a home congregation, from weekly attendance to a small group that offers more support to other services that may be provided in the congregation. Strengthening relationships with God to better cope with mental illness, integrating core beliefs and practices into existing empirically supported interventions or even developing new ones, identifying healthy and unhealthy religious and spiritual beliefs, and knowing when and how to make referrals to religious professionals, faith-based programs, or congregations. Starting the conversation, here are some questions out of a biopsychosocial spiritual assessment that we have that asks, how do you express your spirituality? Is prayer important to you? What is the name of your clergy member, minister, chaplain, pastor, rabbi, or some other spiritual leader? And is it all right to contact the person for more information about your spiritual practices? Do you attend some type of religious service on a regular basis? How do you find inner strength to deal with suffering and adversity? Do you rely on a particular person or follow a specific practice to gain strength? Do you have specific spiritual goals? How does faith help you cope with illness or suffering? And what type of spiritual support do you want as a part of your treatment plan? Has anyone ever asked or used any of these questions before? You could just raise your hand. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so here I've used some of these with my clients before that have been helpful, and then I have some clients that, and I want to point this out because this is just in my learning, but I've had some clients that are like, oh, if I ask how do you express your spirituality, is prayer important to you, or do you have this type of community or that kind of community? They might say, oh, I don't have a belief, or I don't believe anything. That even that is still a belief. How do we get there? So opening that box and digging in that is still looking at somebody's spirituality and their choices and their faith and practice. So,
and here are just from these places where we're finding just like conversation topics and different skills that you can build on. These are just some areas of values and skills that you can look into as you're trying to develop how to integrate your spirituality into your work. Developing a deeper sense of empathy for others in regards to spirituality, finding the capacity for forgiveness. These are all different components of just like how can your spiritual life enrich your work in a way that other ways haven't. So going through empirical research for instrumentation, spirituality itself is a very subjective understanding of, of a higher being and how you practice things. So what they're seeing in instrumentation is that it typically addresses kind of their current spiritual state. It's like, how many times do you pray? Like how are you part of a faith right now? And what they're finding right now when they administer these measures with patients, it's typically when they're under a chronic illness or they're under some high stress, medical condition. So what they're seeing through these different ones that they found, a very popular one they used is the functional assessment of chronic illness therapy. And I printed one out that we can kind of just hand around if you want to look at it. But just kind of seeing it as an understanding of what kind of questions people are giving to gauge a better understanding of their clients, especially when it comes to spirituality. And what they're seeing is that these are specifically designed to see their spiritual state, but there's limited data on finding a measurement of how we can work with clients to develop their need for spiritual intervention. So, we're working with patients and seeing, we're noticing that the questions that are asked are very, in a sense, if you want to put it just like superficial in a way where we're just simply asking them about, do you pray? Yes, no, yes, okay. It's not really seeing then the deeper question of knowing like how has your prayer impacted your life? Things like that can help us better understand then how can we integrate different interventions that incorporate spirituality with our clients. And right now also, so we're moving from the understanding that there's a lot of work that's been done on more like the neuropsychology side versus the scientific moments of being able to do more integration of seeing like how neurology and biology is integrated into spirituality. So as we're seeing right now, so individuals with positive emotions associated with religion and spirituality have a greater percentage of lower levels of depression or faster remission of depression. So from this, the proportions that they're noticing, especially when you integrate faith practices with clients that do have a positive relationship with their faith, there has been a really good outcome of seeing their ability to then have a faster remission out of depression. And these moments where, like, if clients have a negative association with their religion, then they didn't incorporate those as much with seeing then like how they just would pick a different intervention with their clients. And right now, so they're seeing with neuroimaging, it has shown that changes in blood pressure, heart rate, hormones have been noticed in conjunction with spiritual practices. And the importance of these studies right now is because there's not a lot of biological hard facts that we're able to use to be able to then build spiritual interventions for our clients. So right now, they're in the process of kind of working towards that to kind of build now, okay, we understand that there's a linkage between the brain and our neurology and with spirituality and practice. But now we need to kind of figure out more hard evidence so that we can develop these interventions for clients. All right, so 3 spiritually informed therapies that are newer right now are mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, in which is designed to help people who suffer repeated bouts of depression and chronic unhappiness. It combines the ideas of cognitive therapy with meditative practices and attitudes. And then there's also compassion-focused therapy, which aims to help promote mental and emotional healing by encouraging people to be compassionate towards themselves and other people, compassionate to be towards to others, as well as the emotional responses that they have in response to their well-being. And third, another one that's been being developed is forgiveness therapy. And this model is a flexible therapeutic approach that fosters therapy to uncover the depths of a client's anger and obtaining commitment to forgive and working with them to work towards that path of forgiveness. Are these therapies that any of you guys have used with your clients? So. Yeah, so these were some really interesting moments of knowing then how then can we start looking into more spiritually informed modalities and kind of build our skill sets to be able to integrate these into our current practices right now. Okay, so this is a quick diagram. This was the sample of individuals that was taken for the American Values Atlas Religion Report is 101,000 Americans across the United States, so all 50 states. And it basically just broke down, religious affiliation, political views, and noticing then like kind of what we're shifting through in the United States. And as you can see, like 65 and up, there's a lot less people that are identifying with an unaffiliated religion versus moving towards, like more people my age and my friends and our current state of young adults coming into our workforce in areas, we are seeing that there's a bigger level of, or higher proportion of people that are not affiliating with this particular religion. And what my hope is when you guys see this kind of shift in understanding is that because that there's not a particular religion that people are being tied into, there's not those clear-cut understandings that we're going to be able to receive from different faith communities that have their understanding of the history of their religion. But now, knowing now that a lot of people are practicing their own personal spiritualities, and more than ever, we have to understand this cultural competency of understanding how to ask the right questions and build this understanding from our clients and our friends and other people about where does spirituality tie into their life, and seeing how that looks like.
So these are just some organizations that are doing this work or have done this work already. There's a therapy group on spiritual issues at Cambridge Health Alliance in Belmont, spirituality group at the Hollywood Mental Health Care Center in Los Angeles, Spirituality Matters groups at the Nathan Klein Institute in New York, and spiritual issues psychoeducational group at the Bowling Green State University. I'm going to talk a little bit about what they're doing at Cambridge. I'm going to save our time. The first therapy group, it's the first therapy group on spiritual issues that was started by Nancy Kehoe in 1981 in the Department of Psychiatry at Cambridge Health Alliance and Harvard Medical School, Belmont, Massachusetts. She wanted to provide seriously mentally ill individuals with the opportunity to explore religious and spiritual issues in relation to mental health. At first, the idea of having such a group generated anxiety, fear, and doubt among the staff members there. It brought out the ambivalence that many mental health professionals have about religious issues, and ambivalence reflected in a poll that they took that basically said that they didn't feel comfortable with practicing these things. In addition to that, there was highlighted, there was a difference between religious beliefs and practices of the general populations and those of mental health professionals. Staff training and instruction alleviated some staff concerns about Kehoe's group. However, the long-term success of the group has been the strongest factor in staff acceptance. Group rules contributing to its success are tolerance of diversity, respect of others' beliefs, and a ban on proselytizing. Another factor is that the membership is open to all regardless of religious background or diagnosis, so they have a lot of diversity in their group as well. So that's just an example of what they're doing there.
Or I'm not sure if any of you guys are aware of like the chaplains at your hospital, if you know who they are or what they do exactly. So they did a sample of different chaplains from the United States, and they're noticing that some hospitals really integrate them into their case management teams, into their interdisciplinary work, while others, they're not really quite sure like where the chaplain is in the office or what they do exactly or who they are. And really trying to build this common thread of understanding that we do have professionals within our systems that do address the spiritual care of our clients. And just like questions ask yourself, like, are they part of our team? What have they been able to do to contribute to the patient's well-being? Do you know who the chaplain is and what their services are? From here, it's just more of the understanding that we need to see that there is this call for hearing about what they need to say, of what their relationship is with their client. Or with some hospitals, you know, are they required to chart? Are they required to put their charting to the system? Is that something that people look over? And if you work within a healthcare field or a field that does have chaplains within your work, just really notice that there is this, person, this human person that is working with our clients and being able to have that deeper conversation about spirituality and whether or not you're able to maybe advocate it within your interdisciplinary teams, then their voice needs to be heard when you do case management, as well as just knowing that their presence is not been as highly utilized as we would hope that they can be, because it's an area that we haven't really been able to explore as much when we work with our clients. Okay. Here's just a picture of who we thought. Okay. All right. So this is just a little bit breakdown in how we evaluate our circumstances. So primary appraisal, when you're encountering a situation, discerning the possible consequences of an event. And, if we're doing the scenario of you being ill, you start classifying your stressor. Is it a challenge? Is it a threat or a loss? Typically, challenges are things that you can overcome. So it's usually sometimes a positive stressor that you're like, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to beat this illness, versus there's a threat or a loss when it comes into evaluating then what situation you're going through. Secondary appraisal with clients is typically the evaluation of potential options for addressing the stressors and estimates the likelihood of successful response to it. So right now, as you are familiar with, there's the two different types of coping: problem-focused coping, emotion-focused coping. These are two coping mechanisms that I've learned in school throughout my undergrad and grad school. But something from here that we haven't really learned a lot about is religious-focused coping, and how this is a conversation that needs to be brought up with other people about. There's a third dimension, another area of coping that is sometimes untapped or is not explored as much, and encouraging others to just be able to know that this is another area of coping to be able to learn about and to understand. So right here, when they were doing their studies on religious coping, they define religion as the search for significance in ways related to the sacred. Assumes that humans are agents who actively pursue personally significant or valued ends, and these type of ends meaning, being united with the higher power, or how they are one with the earth, or different ways of understanding. Then how do they see the afterlife, and knowing then how are they coping with their situation, with their understanding of the sacred. And here, they define religious coping as when a stressor related to a sacred goal arises, or when people call upon a coping method they view as sacred in response to the stressor. So with people that, do have a very strong faith background, the emotion and the emotion-focused coping or problem-focused coping, those may not be the most effective fits for them sometimes, and recognizing that we need to explore more of just having this then, religious coping, with some of our clients. Okay, so have any of you guys heard of the RCOPE? So this is in response to the push for research to assess how patients use religious coping to deal with a stressor. And this one, if they do the entire RCOPE assessment, is fairly long. It's a 105-item scale, and it discusses 5 different functions of religious coping, which includes finding meaning, gaining control, gaining comfort and closeness to God, gaining intimacy with others, and achieving a life transformation. We have a brief RCOPE as well, if that's something that you find would be something good to be able to use with your clients to understand where their level of religious coping is. And questions that they have in the brief coping is more towards like, how do you see your stronger connection with God? They ask questions about do you think you're being forgiven, asking forgiveness for your sins, as well as it also addresses negative religious coping, so that clients can also be aware of that. There's the positive religious coping, but there's also the negative side too. If they have, for instance, questions of, if they're loved by God or things like that. And so just a resource for you to look into. They do have these online to be able to read more in depth if you'd like to see more of how you can evaluate if you have a client that is interested in religious coping. Okay, so this one is taken, so this understanding of this is from a sample of 3,000 men and women between the ages of 20 and 40. And they took the sample from a population from Denmark. And the reason why they picked Denmark is because their society is noted to be one of the most secular societies in the world, with very low rates of church attendance and religion only playing a very minor role in the public life. So why we were searching into this one was also seeing earlier when we were looking at kind of the demographics of how religion and spirituality is kind of playing through the generations, being able to look into a society right now that has a more secular view of spirituality, just kind of looking at different relationships women and men are finding with their faith. Women have a higher frequency of private prayer, higher frequency of church attendance, and they have more of a positive personal relationship with their loving God, while men are more inclined to change different religions, and they tend to have a more controlling image of God and focus on God's power and judgment. And through this, they use the RCOPE scale through this study, and this is the data that they were able to kind of collect from that and noticing how people religiously cope.
Okay, so we have some examples of coping. A majority of participants Okay, so several surveys showed a high prevalence of religious coping among patients with severe and persistent mental health illnesses. There was more than 80% of participants used religious beliefs or activities to cope with daily difficulties and frustrations. An example of one case that they had was a 32-year-old male patient who was married and had a 1-year-old son. He'd been working in the same company for many years and is a member of the Protestant church, and he was hospitalized because of severe depressive episode. The way they used religious coping to overcome depression for him was by getting spiritual support, and then also by reading spiritual scriptures. And they took an excerpt from their time with him saying that reading Psalms helped me a lot to feel closer to God in difficult times. I realized that others also had to cry and felt desperate in their situation. They argued with God and pleaded to him. And then when he got spiritual support, he said, in very dark moments, when I felt totally lost and abandoned by God, I couldn't cope with my situation anymore. I couldn't fight negative thoughts about the future and myself. I needed someone from the outside to tell me that these are lies and that I am not abandoned either by God or by my family, and that I am not worthless but loved. And so our last slide, we'll get ready to go, is how are we integrating faith with practice? So we have an amazing professor at Baylor, Dr. Holly Oxhandler, who did a cross-sectional study of licensed clinical social workers' views and behaviors related to integrating clients' religion and spirituality in practice. She had a total of 442 LCSWs from across the United States who advertised their services on the internet, provided anonymous responses to an online administration of religious and spirituality integrated practice assessment scale. And the results indicated that licensed clinical social workers have positive attitudes, high levels of self-efficacy, and perceive such integration as feasible, but report low levels of actual engagement. And the reasons for these, as they came up in the second study that we have here, are they felt that there were a lot of barriers, whether it be from the organizations that they work for, whether they felt that their own personal religiosity, education about it, or having religious sensitive practice hindered them. And so that, that's continued to be a thing even as our research is growing here, that some people may not feel supported by the organization, or they don't feel like they have the competence level to work on these things heads on. So these are recent studies from 2017 and 2015, so these are pretty up to date. Have any of you guys ever felt that you had any boundaries or issues, maybe not just with your organization, but might hinder you from integrating faith and practice at work or at home with any of your clients? You just wave your hand. If not, that's fine. Okay. All right, so that is the end of our presentation. We want to thank you guys for coming. We're at our hour mark, so we passed out those the questions in the bowl, and I would just ask that either you look on them or reflect, or maybe talk to someone else who's sitting next to you about them, and that will be that. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.